After 12 years running my father's company, I had finally done it. Turned Harper & Company into a $75 million titan in the logistics industry. And then, just like that, over roast beef and red wine at a family dinner, he looked at me, smiling, and said the words that shifted the ground beneath my feet. "Your brother will take over now." I felt my heart drop, but I smiled. The dining room buzzed with laughter. Glasses clinking, subtle murmurs of congratulations. Ethan, my younger brother, dipped his head like he was overwhelmed with humility. But I knew better. He wasn't surprised. He'd been expecting this. Maybe he even planned for it. My father rested a hand on Ethan's shoulder, pride glowing on his face like the man had just crowned a king. He had made up his mind long before speaking those 9 words. The words that tried to erase everything I'd built. 12 years of work, gone just like that. I remember how I held my wine glass that night, the weight of it grounding me as I kept my expression composed. I had learned in this family that showing pain was showing weakness. So I raised my glass and said, "To Ethan, smooth, controlled, the perfect daughter." My mother glanced at me from across the table. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes, they knew. She had always seen what I did. She just never said it out loud. She wouldn't now either. That wasn't her way. But Ethan, he met my gaze across the table and I caught it. The smirk, barely there, but it was all I needed. That moment told me everything. This wasn't just my father's decision. Ethan had orchestrated this. He had slid into place with all the right moves, all the right words, playing the part of the reformed son who was ready to step up. And my father, the traditionalist, he bought it. Sons inherit, daughters support. That's how it always was in his world. What they didn't realize, what neither of them knew, was that I hadn't spent the last 12 years just building a business. I had spent those years building a fortress. And tomorrow, they'd find out just how well I'd fortified it. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every deal I'd made, every sleepless night spent poring over spreadsheets, every time I put the company above my own life. I had bled for Harper & Company. And they thought I would just step aside. By 3 a.m., I was in my home office, the glow of the screen lighting my face as I typed furiously. I knew where every contract was, every clause, every contingency. I had structured this company piece by piece. And they had no idea how deep my roots ran. Ethan thought he'd slide in next week, sit in the CEO's chair, and everything would fall into place. What he didn't know? I held the keys. Not just the literal ones, but the legal, contractual, operational keys to Harper & Company. At 8:45 a.m., I walked into the building like I had every morning for the past dozen years. Same suit, same stride, same staff, but this time, the air was different, quiet, tense. The kind of quiet that means everyone knows something they're not supposed to say out loud. The news had spread. My father's little announcement had made its way around the office. People watched me like I was a ghost of yesterday's leader. I didn't flinch. I didn't nod or acknowledge their nervous stares. I walked like I still owned the place. Because I did. They just didn't know it yet. I stepped into my office and shut the door. 15 minutes until my father and Ethan showed up to claim their prize. 15 minutes before I dismantled their little coronation. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the document. The one they had forgotten existed. Executive Shareholders Agreement, signed August 17th, 2015. 3 names on that document: Lisa Harper, James Harper, Ethan Harper. They never paid attention to the details, but I did. 9 at Wingtham shop. A knock at the door. I didn't say a word. The door opened. My father walked in like a general returning from war. Ethan followed, smug and polished, in his overpriced navy suit. Lisa, my father said, tone authoritative, rehearsed. I assume you're aware of the transition happening today? Transition, I repeated, leaning back in my chair. Interesting choice of words. I'm aware. Good, he said with a nod, as if we were all on the same page. Ethan will be stepping in as CEO. We'll need your help bringing him up to speed before you officially move on. Move on? I echoed. I think you're mistaken. His face twitched. He wasn't used to pushback from me. Lisa, this isn't up for debate. The decision's been made. I smiled. Oh, I know. The thing is, you don't have the authority to make that decision. Ethan scoffed. Don't make this difficult. I didn't answer. Instead, I clicked a button on my remote. The screen on the wall lit up, displaying the shareholders' agreement. I highlighted the clause I knew they'd both ignored. Any transfer of the executive power must be approved by all majority shareholders. I looked my father in the eye. I'm the majority shareholder. His face went pale. Ethan stepped closer, trying to read the screen. That's impossible, he muttered. Actually, I said, it's very possible. I stood and walked toward the screen, pointing to the next section. In 2017, when you needed expansion capital, you gave me 15% of your shares. In 2019, during that legal dispute, another 10% came my way as collateral. And let's not forget my original 35% from when I joined the company. I turned back to them. That brings me to 60%, majority. Ethan's face was bloodless now. You planned this? No, I said. I protected myself. I pulled out the updated legal filing. Ethan grabbed it with shaky hands. His eyes scanned the lines in disbelief. You can't do this. I already did. My father's silence spoke volumes. He was calculating, trying to find a way out. But there wasn't one. I'm not firing you, I told Ethan. You can stay, take an advisory role, a generous salary, but you answer to me, or walk. I'll buy you out. He looked at my father, begging for rescue, but my father had no lifeline to throw. You've changed, he said to me quietly. No, Dad, I replied. I just stopped pretending. After that long night, I barely slept. My mind kept spinning through every sacrifice I'd made for Harper and Company. The endless late nights, the birthdays I missed, the relationships strained or broken under the weight of my ambition. I'd given everything to this company, and now they expected me to just step aside. They seriously underestimated me. By 3 a.m., I was in my home office, fingers flying over the keyboard. Every contract, every share certificate, every executive agreement. I knew them all inside and out. Ethan must have thought this transition would be a breeze, that by next week, his name would be on the office door, his position secured. What he didn't realize was that while Dad was busy with public appearances and Ethan was pretending to learn the ropes, I was quietly locking down something far more valuable. Control. At exactly 8:45 a.m., I walked into Harper & Company's headquarters like I always had for the last 12 years. Same walls, same polished floors, same hum of efficiency as the staff settled into their day. But today, this place felt like a battlefield. The reception was unusually quiet, that eerie kind of quiet, right before a storm. Everyone knew the whispers had already started. News of Dad's announcement at dinner had spread like wildfire. Employees glanced at me, hesitant, unsure where their loyalties lay. I didn't acknowledge them. I walked with confidence, heels clicking on the marble floor, my posture steady. Never let them see you shaken. I stepped into my office and closed the door behind me. I had exactly 15 minutes before Dad and Ethan would arrive, expecting to take their new roles as CEO and heir apparent. 15 minutes before their carefully laid plans came crashing down, I sat at my desk, took a deep breath, and powered on my computer. The screen lit up, revealing a list of confidential documents they never thought to check. Ones they assumed didn't matter. I opened the ownership records, hovering my hands over the keyboard before clicking on the file labeled Executive Shareholders Agreement. At precisely 9 a.m., there was a sharp knock at the door. I didn't respond. The door swung open. In walked my father and Ethan, both oozing confidence. Dad strode in like a king surveying his kingdom, while Ethan, in an expensive navy suit, flashed me a smug, triumphant grin. "Lisa," Dad said, his voice that usual commanding tone, as if acknowledging me was some kind of favor. "I assume you're aware of the transition happening today?" "Transition?" I repeated smoothly, leaning back in my chair. I glanced at Ethan, whose smirk just widened. "Good." Dad nodded, like we were all in agreement. "Ethan will be stepping in as the new CEO. We'll need you to help with the handover, get him familiar with the operations before you officially move on." "Move on?" I echoed, feigning confusion. "Dad, I think you're mistaken about something." His face twitched, irritation flashing briefly. He was used to my quiet compliance, my ability to fall in line. He wasn't ready for this. "Lisa," he said, voice tight like he was talking to a child, "this isn't up for debate. We've already made the decision." I smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Oh, I know, Dad," I said softly. "The thing is, you don't have the authority to make that decision." Ethan scoffed low, shaking his head. "Lisa, don't make this difficult. We're trying to do this the easy way." I didn't answer. Instead, I reached for the remote on my desk and pressed a button. The large screen on the wall lit up with the document I'd been reviewing earlier. The Executive Shareholders Agreement, signed August 17th, 2015. Signatories: Lisa Harper, James Harper, my father, and Ethan Harper. Dad's face paled just a fraction. I turned to Ethan. Do you even know what this document is? He crossed his arms, shifting uncomfortably. A shareholders' agreement, he guessed. I nodded. And do you know what it says? I tapped the screen, highlighting a crucial clause. This document was drafted when Harper & Company was restructuring. It clearly states that any transfer of executive power, like appointing a new CEO, requires approval from all majority shareholders. I locked eyes with Dad. Dad, I hold 60% of the company's shares. Silence fell like a suffocating blanket. Dad's expression hardened. That's impossible, Ethan muttered, stepping forward to examine the document. Actually, it's very possible, I said smoothly. You see, while you were busy failing at every startup you touched, and Dad was busy playing the patriarch, I was doing something else. I leaned forward. I was securing my place. I turned to Dad. Remember when you needed capital for expansion in 2017? You signed over an additional 15% of your shares to me in exchange for my investment. And in 2019, during that legal battle, another 10% was transferred under my name as collateral, which you never reclaimed. That plus my original 35% makes me the majority shareholder. Dad's jaw clenched, and Ethan was visibly panicking. You have to be, he started. I pulled out a second document. This is the most recent legal filing with the state. Want to verify? Ethan snatched the paper and scanned it. His face drained of color with every second. You can't do this, he stammered. Dad, tell her she can't do this. Dad remained silent. He knew I had legally outmaneuvered him, and there was nothing he could do about it. I exhaled slowly and stood up. I'm not firing you, Ethan, I said. I wouldn't want to force you into the real job market, but you will report to me, and you will work under my leadership. Otherwise, I gestured toward the door. You're free to leave. Ethan turned to Dad, eyes pleading. But for the first time in his life, Dad had no answer, no way to fix this, because this wasn't his company anymore. It was mine. The silence in my office was suffocating. Ethan clutched the legal document tightly, his fingers white from the grip. Dad stood rigid beside him, expression unreadable. But I knew better. He was calculating, trying to find a way out. There wasn't one. I had spent years preparing for this moment. Not because I expected betrayal, but because experience taught me never to assume loyalty where power was involved. For the first time, my father looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe he never really saw me at all. Is that it? Ethan finally said, bitterness thick in his voice. You're just taking everything. I let out a soft, humorless laugh. Taking everything, I repeated, stepping closer. Ethan, I built this company from nothing. Every contract, every expansion, every innovation, I made it happen. While you were busy failing upwards, I was keeping Harper & Company alive. I leaned in slightly. So no, I'm not taking anything. I'm just keeping what's already mine. Ethan's face twisted with anger, but he had no comeback. He knew I was right, and worse, so did Dad. Dad had spent years believing bloodline mattered more than ability, that his son would inherit what was rightfully mine. He had underestimated me. And now he was paying for that mistake. Dad finally broke the silence. "You're making a mistake, Lisa," he said calmly, but I could hear the strain beneath his words. "A family should stick together. Do you really want to burn this bridge?" I met his gaze, steady and unyielding. "Dad, you burned this bridge the moment you made your decision without me." His lips pressed into a thin line. "Business is bigger than one person. We can find a solution that works for everyone." I tilted my head, pretending to consider. "Oh, I agree," I said. "That's why I'm offering you both a choice." I turned to Ethan first. "You can stay with the company," I said, voice smooth and professional. "But you won't be CEO. You'll take an advisory role with limited authority. Your salary will be generous, but you will report to me." Ethan stiffened, but I didn't stop. "Or you can walk away. I'll buy out your shares at market value. Take the money and find a new project to sink your teeth into." Dad scoffed. "You're acting like you hold all the cards." I smiled. "I do." A thick silence followed. I let it sit. Let them feel what it was like to be powerless. Finally, Dad exhaled, shaking his head like he couldn't believe it. "I never thought you'd do this," he muttered. "Not to your own family," I whispered. His words hit me hard. Not because I felt guilt, but because I wanted to say he was the one who had done this, that he had made the choice to push me aside, to act like I was temporary. But I didn't say it, because in the end, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I wasn't going to let them take what I'd built. Not now. Not ever. Ethan stormed out first. Good riddance. I knew him well enough to predict what was next. Going to relatives, family, friends, painting himself as the victim of corporate betrayal. I didn't care. I wasn't here to win their approval. I was here to win my future. Dad lingered a moment longer, as if waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, he gave a slow nod. "You've changed," he said quietly. I met his gaze. "No, Dad," I said. "I just finally stopped pretending." Then he left. I exhaled. The moment the door clicked shut behind Dad, the weight of the silence hit me like a tidal wave. For a split second, I allowed myself to slump back into my chair, exhaustion clawing at my bones. But there was no time for rest. The war for Harper and Company had just entered a new phase, and I had to be ready. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah, my right hand and longtime confidant. "Lisa?" Her voice was cautious but firm. She already knew something big was happening. "I just took control," I said quietly. There was a pause on the line. "Wow," she breathed. "Are you okay?" I smiled despite myself. "I will be. But we need to move fast. I want you to call in the executive team for an emergency meeting. Get everyone together in the conference room in 30. On it." As I ended the call, my mind was racing through the next steps. Damage control, reassurance, and asserting authority before any rumors spiraled out of control. I stood and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city skyline. This city was mine now. Not because of blood, but because of grit, perseverance, and the willingness to fight when others fold. 30 minutes later, the conference room buzzed with nervous energy. Faces I'd worked alongside for years looked to me, waiting, I raised my hand to quiet them. "Good morning," I began, voice steady and clear. "Today marks a new chapter for Harper and Company. I know many of you have questions, and I'm here to answer them. I'm not just your CEO. I'm a partner who's committed to this company and to every one of you. Together, we'll face these changes head on. No one here is being left behind." A few nods, some tentative smiles. "Starting now, my door is open. I want transparency, I want ideas, and above all, I want us to move forward united." Sarah gave me a small thumbs up from the corner. This was only the beginning. The hardest part wasn't taking the reins. It was proving I deserved to hold them. But I was ready. Because I wasn't just fighting for Harper and Company. I was fighting for myself. The room settled, but the weight of unspoken doubts lingered. I knew trust wasn't won overnight, especially in a place where loyalty had long been tied to old leadership. After the meeting, Sarah stayed behind. "They're going to test you," she said softly. "Not just the staff, competitors, shareholders, even the board. You've shaken the foundation." I nodded, eyes fixed on the skyline beyond the glass. "Then I'll make sure the foundation is stronger than ever." She smiled, but I caught the flicker of worry in her eyes. "You ready for the fallout?" "I don't have a choice." That night, as the city lights flickered on, I sat at my desk, the silence broken only by the hum of the computer. Emails flooded in, some supportive, some veiled threats wrapped in corporate language. I picked up the phone. "Get me the security team and double-check the building's access logs. I want no surprises." The game had changed, and I was playing to win, no matter what. Because this wasn't just about business. It was about proving I belonged. And I would do whatever it took.